Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. I had a dinner the other night with somebody who recently relocated from France to Bulgaria, and we were just having a conversation about the appeal of the country, what it was that caused them to relocate, situation in France, the history, etc. And it spawned me, or spurred me, I guess is the better word, to think about discussing with you guys how to use Bulgaria, and there's other countries like it. You might think of Georgia this way, you might think of a bunch of different places this way, as part of a global residency package, because there's some really good advantages that a lot of people aren't thinking about and aren't paying attention to. And so I'm going to speak from personal experience in this video and go through some of the things that I think are really good and how it can fit into an overall strategy for you that is not just about one country, but about multiple strategies, multi-jurisdictional approach. So we're going to dive into that today. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, nail the notification bell, make sure you hit that all thing, and so you don't miss out on any of our videos. I really appreciate your support, and if you would like help with relocating abroad, figuring out what the best residency or citizenship is for you, optimizing your taxes, forming companies, bank accounts, all these kinds of things, please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. Or send us a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com. Okay. All right. So some great characteristics of Bulgaria. I'm going to list kind of three that I think stand out. Number one is pretty low tax. It's basically the lowest tax in the European Union, aside from Cyprus. Well, I would say aside from special tax regimes. Okay, so in Cyprus, you have the non-dom. In Portugal, you have the NHR. In Ireland, you have the non-dom. You've got these various different programs. Aside from those specialty programs, it's the most efficient place for tax in the European Union. 10% flat tax, 5% on dividends. Really, you should pay about 7.5% in most cases. And for most people, that's pretty reasonable, right? They're going to say, hey, I'm willing to pay some tax, I understand. And some people actually like today to pay some tax, so at least they can show governments elsewhere, hey, here's where I paid my tax, here's how much tax I paid, my money is clean, my money is good. And there's something to be said for that increasingly, right? Number two thing about Bulgaria, very low cost. This person I was talking to had lived some time in Portugal, and we were discussing how, hey, listen, Portugal is not expensive, but it's not cheap like Bulgaria, right? You can go and just the cost of living is quite low, and the quality of life that you can get, granted it's got a ceiling just because of the limitation of conveniences in Bulgaria, but the quality of life you can get for the price is extremely high, meaning that you don't have to spend much money to not have to worry and live fairly well. Okay, so that's an advantage. Third thing, no minimum requirements for staying. This is an underrated, overlooked aspect. Most places, we deal with residency programs basically everywhere in the EU. And I can tell you, aside from golden visas, almost every place has a minimum stay requirement. Typically, it's 183 days. Sometimes it's as much as 9 months. Well, if you think about that, that's quite a commitment. Bulgaria, on the other hand, is a great place where you can have as a base. It's pretty well connected by air. You can go and you can say, hey, listen, this is going to be my tax home. This is going to be where I'm going to pay taxes. I'm going to show other places. And I'm going to be able to go out to other areas. And this is basically what I did when I first moved here. Okay, so when I moved to Bulgaria, which when I first got residency was in 2018, the part of the thing was my wife and I, which wasn't my wife at the time, but we were doing a lot of traveling, and we wanted a place to base ourselves out of that you didn't have a 5,000 euro a month apartment that's going to sit empty for half a year while you're traveling, right? We wanted a place that was convenient, that it was easy to get things done, etc. This is a city that you can go almost anywhere. Sofia, the capital, you can go almost anywhere in 20 minutes. You can walk most places. It's fairly flat. It's fairly accessible. These things are all good. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things to dislike as well, right? But there's a bunch of things that work well and things to like. And so from that standpoint, if you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to have different bases around the world, I'm going to have different points, and I think this makes a ton of sense, by the way, because, for example, the weather is not great all year round. I used to hear people saying on Instagram, is it summer yet? And I'm thinking, this is crazy, like it's summer somewhere, go where it's summer. And same idea here, right? So maybe you want to spend your winters in Dubai. Okay, great. Well, summers are horrible in Dubai, right? So where are you going to go? Well, it turns out Europe's really nice during the summer. Great. Maybe you want to spend winters in South America. Great. Where are you going to go in summers? Maybe you go to North America, right? You can split it up between different places. And if you're going to not be someplace for a lot of the year, then probably you want your cost burden while you're not there to be lower. I was talking to a good friend and client and business partner, and we were discussing, if you have a place you're spending $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month on in some place, that's a big incentive not to leave that place, right? At least for me. And so, that's not something that really makes sense. But if you can say, hey, listen, I'm spending, $1,000 a month. Okay, if it's sitting empty, it's not the end of the world, right? Of course, you can buy a place and, maybe keep your bills a little bit lower, but you have the money is tied up one way or another, right? So there's a real cost. I think this is really worth noting. It's really worth paying attention, especially one of the things I've started talking about on this channel more is the idea of having multiple residencies. There's a certain value in having an EU residency. I deal with people who go and become resident in Thailand. Lots to love about being a resident in Thailand. There's a bunch of appeal there, right? They've got a great visa program. There's ways that you can structure your taxes very efficiently. There's lots of cool things that are offered in places like Bangkok. Then you can go down to the beaches. It's easily connected around Asia, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, if you want to get a US dollar debit card, this is, from a foreign bank, this is a problem. Most of them don't offer it. It's very, very difficult to get that debit card as somebody who's resident in Thailand. If you're resident in Bulgaria, you're in an EU country, it's quite easy. They aren't on any blacklists, they aren't on any gray lists, there's just no issues like that, right? Makes it quite easy while still not exposing yourself to the high taxes of Germany or something like this, okay? So something to consider. Next, you're in a situation, like I said, where it's quite a well-connected city and you've got low cost. So anyway, this is a basic overview of just kind of something to consider that probably not enough people consider. If you're going to have some various different bases, sometimes from a freedom standpoint, from a lifestyle standpoint, it's nice to have a place that you don't need to spend as much time. And yeah, you can achieve that by having a golden visa in Portugal or a golden visa in Italy or something. And that's perfectly fine if you want to do that. I mean, that's great. Some of these are Portuguese. The Italian program is not so good, but the Portuguese program is very good in my opinion. This being said, does that, if you're not going to do that, then what are you going to do? Are you going to spend enough time there? Yeah, okay. You could roam the Schengen zone and you can get away with that. So that's typically a pretty good option. But keep in mind, as places to go, places that have a low stay requirement are great. If you can add to that the fact that they give you some other type of access, such as access to financial infrastructure, they give you low costs and low taxes, that's a win. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you have questions, comments, put them in the comments below, and I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.